Welcome to another episode of The Creative Aspect, the podcast all about marketing, branding, advertising, and everything else in the creative world. This is a podcast for creatives, by creatives, and today I'm bringing none other than the Liz Rowe. So Liz, what's up? How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm really excited for this, and I feel very blessed to have you asking me because I've known you for so long.
Right.
So I feel like we've talked about doing so many different creative things that it's just really cool to see you doing your work and then I get to be in it.
Wow. So. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we get into the questions, I just want to read out some of her accolades. I wrote it down because she's just that special, right? So Liz started photography at the age of 16 years old. She is a wedding photographer of 11 years. Her work has been featured in New York Times, Vans, like the shoe brand, and the Washingtonian Wedding, which is like a premier magazine for DC, showcasing wedding photographers, venues, and all of that nature.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
I mean, I've had other things here and there.
This is your time to flex. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm just kidding. No, those are my top ones, the ones that I'm the most proud of. I will say the New York Times, I was featured both on their online and in print. And
she said, let me correct it real quick.
Let me say that's a big deal because the fun thing is that I'm actually featured in the paper that has the presidential win. So it was when Biden won. It says Biden beats Trump or something, and just flip a few pages. I'm literally right there.
Right there.
Yeah,
right.
I just thought that was cool because it's kind of more of a historic piece.
Right.
I don't really need the whole politics side, but it's that piece because it's politics will always kind of stand in the time of history.
That's exactly what we're saying.
So I'm there I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. How did you get into photography and ultimately wedding photography?
Well, so I grew up loving photos ever since I was really young. So I had a little, the Barbie brand. I had a film camera and I remember being gifted that from one of my best friend's parents, and I think I was 7. And I just remember taking that all around, and then I got to the point where I just kept upgrading and getting little point and shoots. And then once I started getting into 15, 16 is when, probably 15, I was taking photos of just all my friends all the time, and I wanted to be I'm going to be a Vogue photographer, you know what I'm saying? And then I was I'm just going to keep doing this. But then I got asked randomly from a friend. They were like, hey, can you take pictures of my sister's getting ready photos for her wedding? And I was like, sure.
Wait, that was your first job?
Yeah.
Official?
Yeah, the first time I ever got paid, and they paid me $50, and I was there for 4 hours. Yeah. And for, that's a lot of money for a 16-year-old.
Right.
I was like, no way. So then once I got those pictures, at the same time for school, they asked me to do an internship with someone. Every single year in high school, you had to do an internship.
Okay.
And so I ended up finding a photographer. My parents knew her, and then I spent a week with her, and then she pretty much was I showed her those pictures of the wedding, the getting ready photos.
Right.
And then she saw them and she was like, Liz, I'm not kidding. Right now we need to make you a Facebook page, which the big thing.
Are you still in touch with her?
Yeah, we don't talk as frequently, but if I hit her up, then we would be
wow.
Yeah.
So she really saw it in you.
Yeah.
Before a lot of people did.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even have considered, I think, fully going into my business the way that I had, especially at that age. And especially because I thought I wanted to be in fashion. Mm-hmm. But with somebody who all of a sudden just immediately believes in you and then says no, we're making you a page and all this stuff, it just started domino affecting. And I was thrown into it, but also it's it feels really special because I feel like I was meant for it, but I didn't know it even for myself. And sometimes you have to have somebody outside actually speak that into you and be like, hey, I see it in you.
That's a bar right there. Mm-hmm. She's going to be dropping bars. So just disclaimer, you know what I mean? But that's really cool. Hearing that that's your first official job as 16-year-old to be plunged into the wedding photography. So I'd ask how's it like being your own boss?
Well, I think it's pretty awesome because I get to have the flexibility to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Right. So I can pick up my laptop, because the good thing about being a photographer is once you do your session, and if you have free time, like you don't have any other booked sessions for that month or that week, you can literally pack up a bag, take your laptop, and go. So
Yeah.
I love that, and most people don't have that kind of freedom unless they work remote, but they're still confined within somebody's rules that aren't their own. So what I love is that I make my own rules, but there's a flip side to that where I feel like sometimes the grass is always greener, where like the weight of everything falls on me, and I don't have anybody to like pick up. I don't know. I could hire out a ton of people to do things for me, but when you also are self-employed, you don't always like have all the money to provide the kind of income you want for other people. So then, so that's a flip side. It's like you have a give and take. Sometimes I wish I was working in a 9 to 5 because I could have my weekends free.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because when you're a creative or just a self-employed person, I think that you can get into the habit of acknowledging that you can work 24/7, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I know as a photographer, once you have busy seasons, there's a tendency to literally, like last year, I was so busy. I was working 14-hour days for 7 days a week for most of like my season. And it was just not the greatest in my mind. But
so perhaps you should talk a little bit about that. Like in addition to wedding photography, what do you do? Because someone listening to this or watching this might be like, wait, you were doing weddings like 14 hours a day, 7 hours a week. What does your typical like season for photography looks like?
So wedding season usually occurs between the months of like the hot times would be, I would say like April to October is like the thickest.
Right.
You can have weddings in November, still a fair amount. You can have weddings in December. You can have January. I never get any for February, and I usually get one in March. During the busy season, you can have, it depends on how much you know you can do, but last year, because of the flood of everything with just COVID and all that, finally like relaxing, everybody wanted to get married. So there was an influx, which was incredible.
Right.
But I mean, it was like every weekend had a wedding.
Right.
Or, well, and if I just wanted to make extra cash because I like, you know, I have like other, like my dog, I have to like pay for my living expenses.
Right.
I'm like, if I want to have like extra cash, I could second shoot for somebody else. So assist them. And so anyways, I could have like 4 or 5 weddings a month, and I was like crushing my soul. But also like, it was really fun because when you are someone who is driven, it's cool to see what limits you can have. And I definitely reached my limits last year. And so that's why this year I said, okay, it's really cool to acknowledge that I can be like that kind of driven person that I really respect and can like see as like, that's the workaholic me. Yeah. But also,
like,
I value,
a balance.
Yes, I value me time way too much. And I also value like mental health and everything that money isn't everything.
Right.
But it was cool to see what I could do. Right. So I can see what Liz Rachel can do, but now I'm going to relax a little and like try to balance like, let me have like maybe half of that or like 75% of that. But anyways.
So you mentioned something like mental health, and I think like it's something that is more talked about in today's. But I think creatives in general, specifically photography, there's a different way mental health can manifest. Have you had specific ways where you've been able to kind of like untether from the work and just focus on mental health, or like how do you?
Incorporate like taking care of myself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like I said, the benefit of working for yourself, you can travel whenever. Right. So that's my biggest way that I've always kept myself sane.
Yeah.
I kind of...
And you do love your traveling.
I love traveling. So it's already something I love doing. And then it's also nice because it's always been compatible with my lifestyle. And I guess since I started so young, I don't really know what it would have looked like otherwise. But anyways, travel and my business go really well together. And so that's really nice for me because it's so comforting to get away from everything that in where I am. I just always feel like this weight of an expectation, because that's the thing also when you work for yourself is you will 100% always have someone expecting something from you.
Yep.
Unless for some reason you have like finished every single, which I did this year. I finished and I had one day where I had nobody expect anything. Yeah, there was emails that might have needed. But that's small expectations.
Right.
There was no one needing a gallery delivered.
It's like you get the passive aggressive clients sometimes that are like, hey, no rush. Just want to see like the wedding you shot yesterday is available today. You're like,
I know. And it's hard because like I really care about people, like, because that's at the core of my business. It's not money and all that.
Right.
And so I can have a tendency to like, well, I had to learn this as I have to like remind myself to take care of myself, and that just because someone's asking, you have to. So that plays in the mental health as like, but also my needs should come first so that I can better serve them. But I do have like somewhat of a people pleasing tendency to be like, because I just care about like how much money they've spent on me, and also like I acknowledge that they also had like the happiest day of their life photographed by me. Why wouldn't they want? So like every time that somebody reaches out, I'm like, it's a very valid thing to do, and I don't dismiss the fact that like you want something, but then I have to see like where am I at mentally, and so it was so nice to have like one day where I could just be like, ultimately I'm good for the day. I can breathe.
I can respond to the email tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need to. But so with that, like going to like travel, when you're in a bad, or like if you're really burnt out, which I was very burnt out last year, it can get you in mindsets of just other ways of thinking. And I have a tendency to overthink a lot of anxiety. So what I'm saying is getting away from the area that is making me feel weighted is a really good escape in its own way. But also it's like, I acknowledge like all the things that I have to still do, but I can kind of breathe. The other simple ways, just reading and like being outside when it's summer being by the water. Yeah. Love that. So.
Okay. Well, let's take a step back to when you started. Because this podcast is about marketing, I do want to hear in your opinion, how has marketing in 2012 when you started in 2023 look like?
Social media changed so much. So in 2012, when I started, I remember just as the mentor told me, she's like, let's make a Facebook page. And the weight of Facebook isn't as heavy as it was back then. So I just remember just always posting to Facebook. And then I remember Instagram really not being that big of a deal, but I was like, I'll still put it on there for fun. But that wasn't my focus.
Right. And
then I think that word of mouth was so much stronger back then because of the fact that social media was not as like impressionable or whatever. So I would say it was a big deal, Facebook, word of mouth. Now it's definitely social media in the way of like, it's even different now because of TikTok and Reels and all the video shorts. Right. But Instagram has definitely become something much bigger than it was. And I have a tendency to find that at least like 40%, I'd say 30 to 40% of my leads or my clients come from Instagram, which is wild. They just find me through hashtags and whatnot. And then it's still a lot of word of mouth. Word of mouth will never die because it speaks volumes. It's like a review in person.
So you're saying like to this day, like 40 to 45%, is that what you said?
Or 30 to 40, is probably like Instagram.
It's through the Instagram hashtags.
I don't ask everybody, but I've had enough clients say that like, oh, I found you through a hashtag. So it's been a hashtag.
Right.
You just have to be specific with them. So if you want a tip, this is something everybody probably knows. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Because there's a conversation about like, do hashtags still work?
I have had many different clients say like, I found you through your hashtag DMV wedding photographer or DC wedding photographer. I feel like it's an overpopulated probably hashtag now, but I always feel like the perfect people find you. So, but I still think that hashtags work. I'll have to let you know because I'm about to go hard on marketing in like in a few weeks.
So maybe we'll have to have a round two.
I know. Yeah, really. I'll give you all my secrets. I just have to figure out the new secrets because I'm like, I'll find them.
Right.
I'll find them.
I do think social media, like the owners, they do this intentionally. So like one, we pay them. But two, as we're testing to see what the algorithm looks like, we're just, creating content for them, Yeah. Because there's the saying of like, social media isn't free.
Yeah.
Or it is free because we're the product.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you can get into the nitty gritty and it gets.
Social media is just, I have strong opinions.
Right.
I don't think it's the greatest thing for our world, but it also has helped a lot.
It has, right.
You just have to use it the right way. Yeah, and wisely.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself before the social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of social media, do you feel like, I know you talked about the hashtags a bit, but are there specific keywords that you look to use when you share your post?
I feel like I've now started thinking of it more in SEO format. Like, so with websites and blogging, you want to make sure you have proper SEO. So you're going to state things. So let's just give an example. If you have a bride wearing, let's just say she's wearing an orange dress. It's like out of this world. I'm going to focus on.
It's funny you say that because I'm going to talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
But yeah, so I feel like my tendency to even do hashtags or like if you want to do keywords even in your description, because you still want your Instagram post to potentially like go on SEO,
Right,
because it can still be shown on Google. Anyways, you would just want to paint it with like bride in, I don't know, unique orange wedding dress. Something that is a descriptive word.
Speaking of that, the other day in preparation for this podcast, I kind of perused through your LinkedIn just to see. And I noticed you posted.
Yeah, that's why I thought about it.
You posted this photo.
Yeah, the orange dress.
Right? And I thought it was super interesting because on Instagram, the caption read Malibu Babe. But then on LinkedIn, it said a high fashion editorial photo shoot in Malibu, California, for a contemporary bride wearing a peach wedding dress.
Yeah, I went all out on the SEO
which
on
was
that.
so great. I thought it was great how, like, instead of just approaching it with one approach for both social media platforms, like you chose different keywords.
Yeah.
So could you speak to that? And for the listeners who might not see this, it's literally a woman in Malibu, California on the beach wearing an orange dress.
If it wasn't obvious. Okay, so I'll tell you this. I never use LinkedIn as like a promoting platform, but then I realized, why am I not? Because if I want to be going towards brand work, because that's something that I also want to do really strongly, I was like, all the brands are on LinkedIn.
Right.
So I said, again, I'm just going to put a ton of descriptive words, because maybe a brand is looking at something, or maybe by doing descriptive words, it will go more towards a specific brand. So I will say that had no like logical, besides me being like, if I know that Google does really well with SEO, let me put this on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is more of a website. It's not like, but it's not like a content based. It's more like you think of it as networking.
Yeah.
So then I was like, let me be more like educated sounding in the networking world, where I feel like Instagram,
it's like,
it just feels weird to say that same description on Instagram, because it's a bit more personal.
Yep.
So I just don't want to go all like, I didn't want to sound like too googly.
Yeah.
There is overpopulated apps full of way too many photographers and way too many like people talking.
Yeah.
So let's think about places that like don't have as much loud voices, which I think LinkedIn, I'm sure it has a lot of people, but I don't think of LinkedIn as like a photographer's area. Then it's like, maybe it makes me feel or come across more serious, or target the people like brands like who I want.
Right.
I don't know. But
I mean, it makes sense if you think of it from a standpoint of like you're reaching the owners of these brands rather than just like, because Instagram, for example, a brand owner might like hire or outsource people to run their social media. So it's like you have to go through multiple, walls, figuratively speaking, to be able to reach the owner. Yeah, but you can
literally find a CEO right on.
Yeah, like
that
LinkedIn is
so
like
true. That's
CEO of like such and such. You're like, oh, if I just shoot him my, my work, let's see what he or she thinks. I
know.
So
you never know. I also started. I mean, at some point, I'm sure this was so big, and I had heard of it, but Pinterest is also one that I'm trying. I always went away from that because I didn't like how easily your work can be stolen. But then I was like, at the end of the day, Instagram can too. Like, I have a client that booked me this year because she found something of mine on Pinterest that I posted in 2017.
Wow.
And I didn't even post it. It's like I had like...
Wow.
It was... I don't even know how it all worked, but yeah, she found me on Pinterest. And she was one of my most like financially, she's a really good client. So it's not like somebody who was just like, hey, I'm going to pay, you know, nothing.
Right.
So I'm like, Pinterest does work.
It's all about testing, like, truthful marketing is like testing. You know what I mean? Like you have to test which method works. I'm always wary of those that are like, oh, we have it figured out to the T.
Yeah.
Like this is it.
It's like
this is the
tomorrow
only way. It's
something
like,
will change.
it has to be experimental because like look at social media. Early Instagram is completely different than today's.
Yeah.
So an expert in 2012 is not necessarily going to be an expert in today's world. So Liz, the wedding industry, specifically wedding photography, is often looked at saturated. So do you have any tips or advice as to how to set yourself apart from the other photographers?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is how I think most photographers, at the end of the day, we all take good pictures.
Right.
Depending on your skill level. Like, yes, there'll be a difference between a beginner, intermediate, professional, like whatever.
Okay.
But I think at the core, the people who are in this really do love like working with their clients and they love photography. So they have their own voice and our photos can end up being somewhat the same.
Right.
Because also like you're working with clients that they don't always know what perfect art looks like or like, you know, they don't know what particularly good is.
Right.
You have to sell that to them.
Right.
Some people see it, and that's what's really cool. And I love when I have clients who can specifically state how I differentiate myself. And what I usually get is like people are saying like the like emotion or like the they say composition. Yeah. And those are things that like make you a stronger photographer is the composition and like just properly allowing people to be themselves and then be able to get that. To challenge yourself. So I used to have a rule. I don't do it as much anymore, but I want to get back to it. I told myself I need to. Okay. I said every single wedding, you need to make sure to do a pose that you've never done with somebody. Whoa. And so I remember doing that at your wedding. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember that's when I was really going down that whole world as I was like, I want to make sure that they feel like I can make a different story for them, not just in other ways, but like with poses too. So it's not like they look at my pictures and they're like, oh, that looks exactly like the one you blogged. And so it's big on like, what can I do posing wise? But even louder than that is what can I do lighting wise? I'm really big on like, so I love old film and I love how like documentary photography is taken. So I'm just going to give envision this is like, let's say someone's standing right next to me. And I want him to stay as close to me as possible so that his silhouette is there. But let's just say he puts his hand on his hip and I want to shoot through his arm. So he's there but it's like his body language is showing in the photo. And then but you see like maybe like a kid playing basketball and like the way back or whatever. You want to play with the depth of field, which I think says a lot about a photographer is like playing with depth of field. And that's an angle. So that's composition. So it's all on that. Like, I think that speaks really loud to stand out. Right. Because it's like, you want to make things sometimes more from like the perspective of like who you're shooting or photographing than just like photographing what you see. And I think that can make you stand out. It's such a very specific thing, but I think that makes you stand out pretty loud. Breathing on your camera lens. So many people don't know that, but like create fog. Breathe on your camera lens. You know, like
I didn't know that. I'm gonna try it out.
Yeah, like I have a lot of little secrets that I've tried. Like
I usually breathe on my camera just to clean it.
Yeah, but if you want actual mood and you want if you want a couple that's like in the wind and you want them to like close their eyes and like pretend it's so cold and they're like
just go like this
and then people are like, oh my gosh, the foggy day was insane, and I'm like I'm like no.
Wow. So, the behind the scenes.
Yes,
that's really cool.
So I guess to answer your question, how to stand out, you should do depth of field, and that also encompasses like composition and an angle. And then on top of that, challenge yourself not only with poses, but also with lighting and objects or your own literally your spit, your breath. You can create wild things if you add that to the lens of your camera.
Right. So obviously not a loogie, so she's not talking about that.
But it's not been done before.
Whoa.
It's not been done before, though. So if you're out there.
I will say, and I did a small clip on this before. I call it, and I'm going to say I call it because I think I invented a theory. It's called creatively overthinking. So overthinking by itself, it could be crippling. But like when you creatively overthink, it's like putting this small detail to the audience that you know will react internally, like with joy.
Yeah.
Right. But like the overall audience may not see it.
Yeah. Which you don't want at the end of the day. If you are creative, you don't want an overall audience.
Speak to it.
Yeah. You don't want to ever attract everyone because that doesn't make you an artist. As an artist, you should be misunderstood by a lot of people because that makes you stand out as an artist. Because I really believe like art was never meant to be fully understood, and that's why people did it. That's why you paint, because you felt misunderstood. But the people who have that same exact feeling inside, and it might not be a misunderstanding, it might just be like the way you experience joy and all that.
Right.
But you want the people who experience that same like style of joy or can understand your type of joy because they have an essence of it in them. That's your perfect
to connect
client.
with
So
you.
like you don't want to make everybody happy. So that's why it's just like,
that's a bar.
Yeah, make sure to like.
I told y'all
challenge.
she was gonna drop bars. Like that's a bar
Just
right there.
always. That's what's hard though when you're a people pleaser like me.
Yeah.
That's why you overthink in the negative because
Right.
you want to make sure everybody's happy all the time.
Right. When
While
it's impossible.
Also, yeah, but then you also are like, wait, but I don't even want that person because they don't even. Like if they can't appreciate me, like when I'm really trying hard, why am I still trying to you get the
No, I
point.
get it.
It's just like you want to make yourself. That's also how you stand out. Then is like make people question like why. But then the people who are intrigued by your why are the ones who are your client and are most likely going to spend a lot more money on you because they're like, I see your worth. So you can get $10K from somebody who's like, I don't know, let's just say that's a lot of money for your profession.
Right.
You can have like one client pay $10K because they were like, whoa, your why is so like intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're on that topic of client, what do you see as the most effective way to generate leads in the wedding industry?
I think biggest one is when you establish yourself originally, treat people well. And if you're in it for people, then make sure people know, like, that's why treat people well. It's if you're not about it for money, then it will be expressed through how you treat people.
Right.
And the benefit is money. So what I'm saying is when you make really good relationships with your clients and even, so if you're a wedding photographer, even with their guests, like having good relationship with them, your name will continually pass down or people will be like, who was that girl? Who was that guy? And ultimately, that's your best way of, I think, generating a lead is just to be remembered that you were really kind and that you were, or just like kind and artistic would be awesome.
Right.
So I think that's like the biggest one because that goes into the word of mouth. And then from my point of view, I haven't dabbled into like TikTok enough, but I know a lot of people have become pretty big that way. It's just, you have to like find your niche in there just as much as Instagram shorts. But I think it's always like the big three of like word of mouth and then TikTok probably and Instagram.
Okay.
So I've also been dabbling in the idea, this goes, I guess, really well with your marketing, is that I'm like, do I say it out loud? No. Other people aren't going to do this because it takes too much work. But I've also been considering the idea of like going back to how it was in 2012 and being like direct marketing, which is the literally like campaigns, in person, flyers, brochures.
Yep.
Literally, I'm like, I'm going to go to every rich neighborhood in this DMV area, just slide in a pamphlet. Are you needing a wedding photographer? Like literally, I just want to be like direct marketing, because that a lot of people aren't going to like it. They're going to throw it away. But you are seen way easier than you are in the analytics that Instagram gives you. So I'm just considering it because I'm like, doesn't it have to loop back around at some point?
No,
like we're all going to be exhausted with like not being seen through social media and be like, I'm just going to give them a flyer.
Like direct mail, they have to at least look at it and assess if they care about it enough to throw it away, where if it's on a screen, you know. That's why good marketing should employ like different tactics.
Yeah,
you know?
just try all like all the avenues. You have to make it eye catching enough where they don't immediately throw it away because they're like, ugh, just another letter.
Right.
But I need to make it like,
right, like as soon as you look at it, boom.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, creativity. You're a creative, super creative individual. I should have said this, but Liz has literally photographed all the most important parts of my life, Lexi's life, and now our kids. And everything she's saying, that's a real deal. She's not just saying it because there's a mic in front of her. She really does care about people, and her poses are original. She didn't even tell me to say all this. Her poses are original. I couldn't put a word as to why we selected you for various things, but like that's how you differentiate yourself. It just speaks to like your intentionality behind every camera.
Oh, cool.
But while we're on the subject of creativity, how do you balance that with the business side of you? Because you could be too, you know, one way, and it's like you're creative, but you're not profitable.
Yeah.
And then you could be like business, but then the creativity dies down. So how do you balance that?
Okay. This is very personality based. I think because I have friends that are very much like type B. They're like all creative and they have a really hard time with the business aspect, but they are amazing photographers and do very well. But they have to hire out a lot more things. Like they have to have a marketer, they have to have a bookkeeper, they have to have all these extra people help them.
Okay.
So it depends on your personality. Like I'm more type A, so I'm more like I want to have hands-on, which then has its evils because I should ask for help to balance the two. What I learned when I was doing that internship when I was 16, the mentor had told me, so pretty much when you're a photographer or when you're a creative, it's going to be most likely 70% business, 30% creativity. And I think there is like give and take, like maybe 60-40. I think that's the truth though. And so I went to business school. Like I went to the Robert H. Smith School of Business at University of Maryland. And so when I was in there, I only went because I just wanted to make sure I was being smart and I had a good backup, but also because it told me the book knowledge that I knew. And so what I learned and what I would have told myself as a younger kid, I would have said like, hey, before you make the business, make sure you have like a business plan or at least something that can tell you like who your like demographics are, like what is your long-term vision, like what are your like you want to give yourself play-by-play because if you are like a really big creative person, you can have all these, just how you're saying, like the overthinking of creativity. So you have all these ideas all the time, but you want to make sure you're staying on like on where task. Am I going? Yeah, because if you're creative, you're going to be creative and you're going to have fun and you're going to love it. But to not make that die out and become a job, you have to just make sure that you have like all the business side understood enough or just like be aware that it's going to become a job and so it's not going to be as fun. And so with that, also have things like if you're a photographer, have like fun shoots that you do. Just like do things that are also, if it is your hobby that becomes a job, make it like a fun thing still.
Okay, well, let's talk about social media trends. It can be a monster because a lot of creatives feel like victimized by it, right? Because it's like, there's this trend. Okay, now, do I jump on it? Do I not? But then it's like, what about the visibility? So can you speak to that? Do you ever jump on trends? And if you do, how do you remain original?
I like to not be super involved in social media, and this is bad. Because it's good to be really involved in social media to know all the trends. Right. But I think there's a toxic mindset that you can start, like, you can get so, like, that perfectionism or, like, why am I not doing good enough?
I agree.
You start comparing yourself so much, so I don't think it's actually the greatest to stay on trend.
Right.
So the one time that I did pop off and, like, my reel hit, you know, like million or whatever views.
You said that like it's so like, oh, you know, it's only a million. Like what?
I don't see. The thing is,
I don't print that and put it on as a plaque on my wall.
But see, it's because I don't take enough time to care on social media. So when that happened, I was like, that's pretty cool.
I'm the same way.
I'm like, at the end of the day, did I get any clients through it? No. Yeah. So I'll tell you that straight up. I hit, you know, I went viral on this one song. I was the most viral one, and I didn't get a client from that.
Wow.
I didn't get a client from New York Times. Like, I'll say it straight. Like, that's why at the end of the day, if you don't have accolades and you don't have like millions, it doesn't say anything, because that's why I say be kind to people, because kindness and like being like a standout in that way is going to get you a lot more money than ever getting an accolade. Because that's I will always say, like, that's what I actually love about my business, is that I've had all these big features and things,
right?
But yet I haven't ever really reaped rewards from it, but it's given me confidence. So it's like a self thing. Like, I'm like, see, Liz, like, you didn't try to get your name in New York Times. They chose you. Right. You didn't try to get your thing viral. It chose you. Like, I didn't even know it was like the song that got me on viral or whatever. I just liked the song. I hadn't gone on social media for so long, and I just thought the song was witty. I spent 40 minutes just tweaking the video or whatever. And then I closed out because I don't like to look at the views rack up or anything because I would be in my head. And then I go back and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And my friend even reposted it because it was of her and her husband.
Wow.
And it went viral too. So it was like really cool. But I'm like, trends are cool. They're awesome. They can really hurt you and help you, but they might not help you as much as you get hurt. So that's what I think.
To keep that in mind.
Yeah. But I think it is good to challenge yourself. And if you don't have as much of, I'm sure there's people who are much better health in their mind than I am. So I'm sure like if you know that about yourself, that it's not going to destroy you if it doesn't, you spend 5 hours on this video and it doesn't actually go anywhere. Then do it because it doesn't hurt you. You're just having fun. So that's also just like have fun. That's like the main thing. But
so would you say that's the way you like approach challenges in the industry? Because like every industry has challenges, but weddings is unique in that like you can't really replicate like a wedding shoot. You know what I mean? I mean, some do, but that's a different conversation. How do you like overcome challenges? Is it have fun? Is it be mindful? What is your approach to that? A challenge for me, for example, is I can overshoot. This could be its own podcast. Like I can overshoot. Like it's a shame how many shots I can get. And it's not a confidence thing. It's not like, I need to.
It's because you're having so much fun.
Exactly.
I'm like that too. I'm like, wait, what? Now I gotta
but
get
then
through
I look
these?
at it and I'm like, I was supposed to give the client 30 photos and
I know,
and
now I have to give 180 because I literally took 1,000 or more.
So
way
a
more.
challenge that I've told myself is as I'm editing the photos, truly pick like the best of that scenery. And even that can be
so
challenging, you know what I mean? But I want to be able to select, if I'm giving them 40, I want to feel confident enough to say that this is a perfect reflection of how the session
I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that.
But that's a challenge for me. It's not easy.
It's so
hard.
hard.
So do you have anything like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, if we're talking like that, yes, I'm an overshooter as well. I love my work too much.
Welcome,
I love
Liz. It's like what is it, like a meeting? Overshooters meeting.
Yep.
Welcome,
Overshooters
Liz.
Anonymous. No, seriously, I love too much of my work, and I think that like I just like cinematic things. So I'm like, well, that's cinematic, but that's it. And then I'm like, well, and then when you're working with people, humans, they literally have their own opinions of themselves.
Yeah.
So even if I think it's a great photo, they might not think it. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So I haven't pinpointed the way you're trying to. That's my biggest thing is like culling my photos is, that is my biggest struggle. If someone could cull for me, that'd be great. But I don't think they'd see it the way that I see
I know.
which does make you who you are. Right. Oh my gosh.
Because it might select something that is like structurally good, but creatively it's not what you would pick.
Yeah.
You know, so
and I'm like, but if you crop it and you like tilt it this way, it can be a whole different photo. And some photos I've gotten like so much big, like I didn't have potential. But then when I cropped it, I tweaked it and did all this stuff, it had potential.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have seen that.
You're right.
But okay, so to overcome challenges, well, since I overthink a lot, I think I just have to make sure I do one step at a time. I have to like force myself to make everything just like task lists. Here's what I do. I think it's just mainly like just good self-talk because editors, like as photographers, we edit for so long. And I know my mind can cyclically, like for 8 hours a day, just be literally saying, that's not enough blue, that's not enough green, that's not enough. And all you're doing all day is criticizing yourself. Yeah. That's what people don't understand too, is like before you come into this industry, understand you're going to criticize yourself almost every single second of your day. However long you take to work that day, you will be criticizing yourself, which is the worst thing. And that's why I think probably, I don't know, but maybe a lot of creatives are an overthinking person because that's all we do all day.
Right.
And then it can bleed into your personal life because you're just used to doing that. So that's why understanding how to talk to yourself kinder and also just like, and getting to the point where, you do challenge yourself to be like, I'm only giving this much. Yeah. Or giving yourself a cap as being like, hey, you said 40, you can give 80, that's fine. And also it really says a lot about yourself. Like clients love that.
Yeah.
So.
And do you have any funny stories? Maybe it's a wedding shoot, maybe it's an engagement. Like, what's the craziest thing that you feel?
Well, I can tell you the craziest. It's not the funniest, but like last year I had a wedding.
Yeah.
In the spring. It was in Virginia Beach, and it was on the water. This is like the most epic, wildest, crazy story of a wedding. And so what happened was they had their tent. It was right by the water. Everything was great. It was a sunny day. And it was one of those like really rich weddings where like they have all the different like things styled and really, really fun, lighthearted couple. I like loved them to death. Like I'd go see them in Brooklyn right now because they live there.
Oh, okay.
But ultimately, what happened was we were doing the toast during dinner, and all of a sudden the wind started picking up like so much, and nobody knew that it was going to be like raining. And no, but it was like hurricane winds, where it was like, are we going to be okay? And so all the pictures, which I love, like people's dresses are flying, and literally pretty much all the glass on the table was like people were like holding their glassware, right? But then it got to the point where, okay, toasts were done. Now we're gonna like end up going to the dance floor.
Right.
So this is what's the funniest is that right as the first song dropped, like we were like bopping, and because this was like a party kind of client, like all their guests were partiers kind of thing, and all of a sudden I look around and you just hear glass shattering, and like the wind is picking up. Like I have pictures of like everything that was hanging. They had like a disco ball, and they had like these like greenery things, and they were all like literally like vertically like sideways because the wind was so bad. And it was like funny, but there was like wine everywhere. It was like that's what I loved, is like the wine was everywhere because everybody's wine glasses. And then it got to the point where like this person comes up to the DJ, and they're like, you gotta like tell everybody to get inside, because it was, I'm very small, and I felt myself like blowing away slightly, and I was like, holy cow. So then the DJ's like, all right, everybody, it's the end of the song, and we're gonna have to take ourselves all inside. And mind you, this location's an outdoor venue, but it's next to a little tiny baby museum that's an art museum, but we have like pretty much the max capacity of people that can fit in that museum. So as everybody's walking in, it starts like pouring rain and stuff. So we're like all getting soaked. And like I said, I'm literally like blowing away. I have a picture of a guy even like pretending he's flying. And I was like, but literally I might be in the air while I'm taking this. And I literally was like the last one in, and I was like, nobody's gonna know. I'm gonna die that I blew away. But okay, what was funnier too is just like, that was the funny part, is how everything was breaking. But what was amazing, and what I love so much about this, is because we're all jammed and we're all sweating in this small little museum.
Right.
But then in the one room, there was this like old piano. And all of a sudden you just hear like a ton of people singing and like the piano playing. And I go in there, and like the bride and the groom and like their friends, they're all like snuggled by the piano, and it's like a tiny room. And it's like, again, max capacity filled. And it was just like the most perfectly like raw moments where I was
can't
just
even
like,
plan that.
Yeah. And it's just like, there was no song that was going to be on the dance floor that would like match the energy and like just like, it just felt so pure. And that's one of my favorite pictures I have. It's like one of my main Liz Rachel photos, is everybody's like screaming, like the bride and groom, and they're all like hugging, but they're like, yeah. And they're like singing to like the piano. And anyways, but we ended up being able to go back in the end, but it was funny because literally everything was, everything was gone because they had to take it. It was all glass everywhere. But I just think that was like the funnest, like most nostalgic kind of feeling wedding, where I'm like, man, if I could go back.
Wow.
But I've seen it where things go on fire at like, like the sparklers and all that. But I just don't think that's funny. I'm more just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Like,
but that's like a funny, like the glass is what's funny to me. Like there's literally wine everywhere.
It's like visually I was picturing what that would look like. It's like, and a photo of that would say like beauty and chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that.
Because all the tablecloths were like billowing.
Yeah.
So, but then you see like all this like tipped over wine glasses and spilled everywhere. But it was just like, it had a lot of that candid.
I will say that speaks to like how professional you are in calamity, because like you could have just been like, there's photographers that have it in their claws, like something like that. Like, I'm out.
Some people don't like that. I always tell people the crazier the better. I'm like, I'm weird. I'm like, just like when you're on the dance floor, everybody just be yourself.
Just be exactly.
Be you. If you're gonna like take off your tie and like, I don't care. I feel like the messier the better for me. I just feel like there's more of like the candids, and I just want the guests and the client to both feel like the way that like they act around each other. Don't be different because I have the camera.
Right.
I just laugh along with them, and I'm like
you're an extension of the wedding.
Yeah,
not
I'm like I'm
outside.
a guest too. Don't act like I'm not a guest because I'm gonna be just hanging with you guys today. I'm not the photographer. Ew, I am. But
it's funny because like I have friends that are like they'll be like, oh, sorry, I didn't pick you as a photographer. I really thought about doing it, but I just wanted you to be a guest and just sit. And in my head, I'm like,
you're like, ew, that's boring.
Like if I'm shooting, I get to see from sunrise. I mean, sunrise to sunset. I get to see like the ins and outs. I get to see the personal moments. Like
and
it's
you get to hang
honor.
out. You're like, I get to hang out with you for 8 hours versus.
Plus, you're getting paid.
But
yeah,
yeah,
you
I
get
feel
to
like
see the totality of it. Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
While we're on the topic of your professionalism, remember when you shot our wedding? So let me set the stage.
People ask me all the time who it was.
Does someone have a clip of that?
I don't know.
So,
but I'll tell you.
Let me set the stage. I'll say what
true.
we
This
saw,
is the
and then I'll
one.
pass the mic to Liz, and then she'll say what it is. But so let's set the stage. My wife and I, we just got married. We're at the altar, and we're set to walk back after. It's like you're now pronounced, Mr. and Mrs. Kamasi, right? We're walking down and Liz is shooting in the aisle, but she's walking backwards. There's a tree stump that was part of the decoration. She trips over it, somehow recovers enough to still get the shot. This is like, it felt like a second,
Slow-mo?
but for you, it might feel like it was longer. Like, talk about it. Because that was epic.
Okay.
Like the recovery was like amazing.
What's hysterical to me is that I'm going to say two things. I have been asked, like, what's the funniest moment? And I don't always remember all my funny moments until, like, this happens.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, there's been a lot of funny moments. I just don't remember because I've, like, done so many.
Right.
But I sometimes have this memory and I'm like, man, there was this wedding and I don't remember whose it was for. And I'm like, but it was so embarrassing. And, every time you remind me that it was yours, I'm like, bless
That's
the
so
Lord.
funny, yo.
Bless up, because if it was anybody else's, my pulse would have been like, but like, okay. I just remember, you now kiss the bride, whatever. And then you walk out and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure, like, Light and Lexi are such happy, like, oh my goodness. And I was like,
wow.
And then I'm not going to look behind me because typically nothing is behind me. I have the aisle. But of course, I don't know. Was it something you guys added? Because
I
I've
don't
been
remember.
there. I've been to the venue since, and there is no tree stump there. So I feel like
maybe you were the reason why they took her away.
I think so, because I'm pretty sure it was a real log.
It was. Because the thing is, like, so my father-in-law, he does woodwork, and I know he helped us with some of the decor, specifically like cutting certain wood. So I'm trying to see if that was an added piece.
No,
for
I'm
him.
pretty sure. I have always remembered it as, this is not supposed to be here, but why is it here? So I was like, and then I was like getting it, and they were like so happy, and I had them kiss, and it wasn't like right after you guys kissed to like in the aisle. Then I'm like, all I remember is like falling, and I was like, whoa. And in my head, it was so fast, and it was like, you better protect your camera, you better put your arm in the air. So I was like, whoa. And then I remember being like, and I just remember being so slow, and then I was like. And then the stress hit me of like, everyone's seeing you. And then I was like, and down. And then but I caught myself.
It looked graceful. Like no one has ever said like, oh, who was the photographer who
They're
failed?
like, I know out of everything in your wedding that was like great. We just want to point out that one photographer. I'd be like, what?
To me, the way you recovered I was like, what just happened?
I think I remember seeing you like, whoa.
Yeah, because I don't hide reaction. Very well.
No, but it was like funnier
Yeah.
because it got me out of my like, oh my gosh, everybody's seeing me. But then I was like, and then in your head, because you have to be professional, you're like, move along,
Yep.
and
There's
continue
nothing to
taking
see.
photos. It doesn't stop.
I would have felt bad if your camera broke, but I'm so glad it didn't.
No, I always have a reaction of like this. I'm like, you can break your back, but you won't break your camera. I've fallen in water and like fallen like off of like a little hill. I'm like, not where I break my leg, but like enough. And I always like, my reaction's always been to put my hand in the air.
Up. Who taught you that? Like, how did you learn that?
I think it literally is just in my brain how it because it always will be like, put your camera up when I'm like, and so I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is who's more expensive, my camera than my life. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, so Liz, I have a few more questions before you go about your day, or I guess your night at this point. How do you set prices for your wedding photography?
So something that I wish somebody told me earlier is to definitely trust your gut on what you think you deserve, but
Okay.
also be aware of like your competition because so that's your biggest thing is know your competition's pricing.
Okay.
Not everybody's going to have that listed on their wedding on their website, but
Right.
you can probably find someone by just Googling people like Maryland photographers, Virginia photographers.
Okay.
And then click on websites, see what, like, compare your work, kind of like see, like, oh, we probably are about the same, like, level or whatever. People are opinionated. So you can
Right.
opinionate yourself to be like, this person and I are rather the same,
Right.
and this is what they're charging. And then also be like, you also have to recognize, like, how much marketing you're doing and also how many people know your name. So you have to take all that into account. So, for example, like I would be more expensive than I am right now if I lived longer term in DC. Like I was just there for 6 months, but it's like if I really lived there and I had settled in there, and then on top of that, I powerhouse market. Like I feel like it does speak a little bit louder when you are having more of people know your name in
Yeah.
like the area that you're targeting, and also like you're marketing really well
I
so
see.
that your work is shown more. So that gives people more of like, hey, this is your work and it's great. All that to say, it all goes back to though is like I know that I'm good enough to receive what I want. So if I want to do that higher price, I'm going to do it.
Right.
But I know comparing myself with the other photographers in the area, they're not too far off from me and they're at
Okay.
the same rate as me. And maybe like they're $500 more expensive, but because I don't market myself as much, I kind of give myself like the discipline, which I don't think you should do, but that's what I do is I'm like, well,
Right.
market a little bit more, Liz, and then put that
And then you can
$500 on
yeah,
because
yeah.
it makes more sense because you're like being a little bit more active.
Okay.
But it's all just, yeah, I would just say always know what your competition is
Okay.
charging. Yeah, and you just see who books you or not. That's when
Yeah.
you know, too, to change. Is like if no one's booking you, test it out. You might lose somebody. It's okay.
Okay.
Because then you can just lower
Yeah.
your pricing and maybe even reach back out to them. Actually, there's a discount happening. I'm kidding. I don't like discounts, so don't do that.
Yeah, I have my own opinion about discounts, but that's
Yeah. People will
another
always
conversation.
pay if they think you're worth it.
Yep.
So if you think you're worth it, make them believe you're worth it. It's all about sales.
Because someone out there is charging like prices astronomically more than you,
Yeah.
and their work. Art is subjective, but their work, let's just say it doesn't make sense to the price they're charging.
Yeah.
But the confidence.
But it's
will
like the
sell
people
it.
they know and the confidence and
Yeah.
like just, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out, but definitely don't beat yourself up and be like, I'm never worth it.
Right.
If you want to charge $15,000 because you think so, just try it out.
You might
And
not get the
You
client,
may
so
not
what-
get the client, but you tried it, and if you do get them, then you already know you're
Right.
good,
'Cause
and you can get
a
to
lot
20.
of times, all it takes is that one.
Yep. And then you're in their niche, and then you got their
Exactly.
friends.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many. I don't know if I did a great job answering, but
There's no, like whatever. I want your authentic response.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's awesome.
pricing is challenging though.
It definitely is, and I feel like every industry, because there's perception of the consumer and you who are actually putting in the work, your perception on what the price should be, and it's rare for there to be like a marriage between both.
Yeah.
You know, I think one is going to be more pleased than the other, but
Yeah.
that's just the way it works. Do you feel like you are where you want to be right now in your career? I know you say you're going to ramp up marketing in the next coming months, but do you think other than that, like you where you'd like to be?
I feel like last year, like I said, I hit a peak, or it was like my second peak, I feel like, in my business career.
Right.
But I pushed myself to limits I didn't know I could get. And
Okay.
so I feel like that last year was where exactly I could be. This year, I don't feel like I am there because I needed to take a step back to
Okay.
get away from my burnout. But I still don't know if I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in my life. So,
Okay.
with my business, there's still things that I want to do and challenge myself to because I
Right.
know I can do it. And I would like to do it. And I gave myself like a cap, like till 35. I'm like,
Okay.
till 35, but then after that, because you can't be in wedding photography for forever. It
Yeah.
affects your body way too much.
Yeah.
But that's why I want to get into brand work. I would love to do that, and then also like write a book. So there's other things that I really do feel like is more of like what I want my life to be.
Yeah.
But so with my photography, no, I'm not exactly where I want to be.
Right.
And in my life, I'm not exactly. But that's the, I guess,
That's the
probably
gist of it.
predicament of
Yeah.
life.
Well, I mean, that's all the questions that I have for you. This has been very entertaining to kind of, I mean, we are friends, so like I know a lot about what you do. But this has been a great conversation about how you do it
Yeah.
and like what goes on, you know, behind scenes that, you know, the viewers or listeners might not know.
Yeah.
So, you know, as we part ways, do you have any words of encouragement or do you have anything that you want to let the audience know?
I mean, I've definitely loved being on this, and I think it is really encouraging to have a friend that is in the creative world, has done similar things to me, maybe not always exactly the same, but someone who can understand it enough to be there in support of me and also see my value and
Yep.
can speak that to me.
Yep.
So I think like to the people, really find at least one person. You don't have to find a community because finding community is very hard, I think. But if you find one person that believes in you and you can trust them and they like really just like can speak life and see you and value, and also, I mean, if hey, they hire you for things, like
Right.
that says a lot. Like you don't even realize how much like you yourself mean, like you and Lexi mean to me.
Wow.
And I think it's like really rare to find like, I mean, I know you guys are a couple, but even just you yourself, like I think it's rare to find a friend like you because you can get taken advantage a lot when you are creative, and
Yeah.
also people just don't really, because
Yeah.
they take advantage.
Hey,
they don't
come
see
to
it.
this event. Oh, by the way, feel free to bring your camera. It's like,
Yeah.
no, my camera.
Yeah, so
It's
people
not
who
coming.
really respect you and they want to give you the money you deserve, and like,
Yeah.
that's like a really special friend. So I guess the encouragement is find that, and if you have found that, here's your motive or the encouragement to recognize that person and be like, man, they are a good person in my life. So
Wow.
I don't know.
She just like threw that compliment back to me, you know, it's appreciated. As a tradition here on the Creative Aspect, what we love to do is for the last 10 seconds or so, you stare in the camera silently saying nothing.
Oh no.
You know, it's light. Like I have to.
I know.
You should kind
I'm
of
like-
know, like I do these kind of things. Even
I'm literally just sweating, tears. I start screaming. People are like, what's going on? Okay. I'm not allowed to do anything.
well, it just has to be silent. You can make faces or whatever, but you're
Oh.
gonna stare in your camera. I'm gonna stare in mine.
Okay.
I always think it's funny though. Those listening are just like the last 10 seconds.
Really?
They don't know what's happening, so they're just like. I wonder if they jump on YouTube and like, let me just. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Which one?
So you look at your camera. I look at mine.
Dun-dun-dun. I looked away for 1 second, and I feel like I did this a disservice. My contacts are sticking. My contacts are sticking.
Well, this has been another episode of the Creative Aspect, where we talk all things marketing, branding, advertising, and all the creative things in the creative world. If you love this, consider subscribing. And yeah, see you on the next episode. Peace.
Okay, but I gotta say, my eyes. I just had to do that for you because okay.